Après-midi, ah, voilà. Alors, c'est le temps de cliquer sur la petite fenêtre. Bon après-midi et bienvenue à tous les participants et participantes à cette première séance de mobilisation du public. Mon nom est Suzanne Valiquet et je suis accompagnée de mon collègue Dennis Jacobs de la firme Momentum Planification Urbaine et Communication. Nous avons le plaisir d'animer la rencontre d'aujourd'hui. Nous sommes fiers de vous accueillir pour discuter du lancement du plan directeur des buts de la Confédération. Il est important de noter que nous sommes au tout début de cette initiative et que, comme vous le constaterez dans la présentation, nous n'avons fait qu'effleurer la surface des aspects nécessaires pour guider cette étude. C'est pourquoi nous avons besoin de votre aide maintenant. Gardez cela à l'esprit lorsque vous posez une question ou un commentaire dans la boîte de discussion ou lorsque vous posez une question plus tard. Il se peut que nous ne soyons pas encore en mesure de fournir des réponses aux questions détaillées ou techniques, mais il est bon pour nous de savoir quels sont vos intérêts et vos préoccupations dès le départ.
Welcome everyone to the first public engagement session for the master planning exercise for Confederation Heights. My name is Dennis Jacobs, and along with my colleague Suzanne Valiquet, we have the pleasure of being your facilitators this afternoon. It is important to note that we are at the very beginning of this initiative, and as you will see in the presentation, we have only just scratched the surface of what is needed to guide this study, which is why we need your help now. Keep this in mind when posting a question or comment in the chat or asking a question later on. We may not be able to provide answers to detailed or technical questions just yet, but it is good for us to know what your interests and concerns are at the outset. We recognize that the City of Ottawa is located on the traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people who have lived on this land for millennia. We extend our respect to all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people for their valuable past and present contributions to this land. We also recognize and respect the cultural diversity that First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people bring to the City of Ottawa.
Nous reconnaissons que la ville d'Ottawa est située sur un territoire traditionnel du peuple algonquin Anishinaabe qui vit sur cette terre depuis des millénaires. Nous tenons à rendre hommage à tous les peuples des Premières Nations, des Inuits et des Métis pour leurs précieuses contributions à cette terre, passée et présente. Nous reconnaissons et respectons également la diversité culturelle qu'apportent les membres des Premières Nations, des Inuits et des Métis à la ville d'Ottawa. Tout à l'heure, nous aurons des remarques d'ouverture de Catherine Constantine de la Société immobilière du Canada, suivie de Julie Waddell-Smith du Service public et approvisionnement Canada. L'équipe de la firme de consultants Foten vous fera une présentation sur les buts de la Confédération, suivie d'un groupe de discussion avec vous, où vous aurez la chance de vous exprimer en utilisant le clavardage ou en utilisant l'icône de la main levée. À quelques reprises, mon collègue Dennis vous posera des questions qui apparaîtront sur l'écran sous forme de fenêtres. On vous demande de participer à ces questions interactives car elles nous aident à mieux comprendre vos opinions sur les différents sujets abordés. Vous pouvez répondre avec votre souris, clavier tactile ou écran tactile.
We are here today to kick off the first round of discussions with you on the future of Confederation Heights. Our session will consist of a few opening remarks by Catherine Constantine from Canada Lands Company, followed by Julie Waddell-Smith of Public Services Procurement Canada, then a presentation by Foten, our consulting team, followed by a question, comment, and answer session. Now and again, I will be posing an interactive question to get your feedback. This will appear as a window on your screen. You can respond with your mouse, touchpad, or touch screen. We value your responses and opinions and encourage you to participate. Before we get started, I would like to recognize the elected officials that have joined us here today. I understand that they have a few words to help us get the project started on the right foot. David McGinty, the Member of Parliament for Ottawa South. Over to you, Mr. McGinty.
Well, good afternoon, and my name is Jenny Hooper. I have the privilege of working in David McGinty's office. Unfortunately, he's in the House of Commons chamber at the moment, so he's unable to join. So he's asked me to sit in and take copious notes so I can let him know how this afternoon went and what the comments were. And thank you again for inviting us.
Thank you. Councillor Sean Menard, Capital Ward, and Councillor Riley Brockington, River Ward, represent the electoral wards in which Confederation Heights is located. This afternoon, Councillor Menard is represented by Melanie Boyer and Miles Crowder. Over to you for a few words. Thank you.
Are they here with us this evening?
I have a
Oh,
message.
yes.
I have a message from Miles Crowder indicating he's here from Sean's office. Mel is my colleague's name. So if someone could unmute Miles, then perhaps we can hear from.
Hey there, sorry about that. I don't know why my name is showing up as my colleague's name, but I'm Miles. Melanie is my colleague, where we work with Councillor Sean Menard. I work on planning files for the office. We're happy to be here. Councillor Menard and other members of our team were at the Tuesday version of this event, and I'll be sitting in for today's event, for most of it at least. Look, this is a huge swath of land. You can fit pretty much downtown Ottawa in this swath of land. And we're excited about a master plan coming forward here because this land could be better used, but we also know that when we're disposing of public lands, it has to be held to a higher standard than any other developments. And so we'll be pushing for a significant community benefit as part of this. We know we've worked with CLC in the past, and we know they've been very good on aspects of that. Definitely want to see affordable housing. We want to see a lot of green space protected here, some green space better used. And yeah, so we'll be following along every step of the way, and folks can always reach out to their office if they want to let us know what they'd like to see us advocating for us as part of this visioning. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Miles. And now, Councillor Brockington, I see you're on the screen already, so over to you.
Thank you, sir, and thank you very much for the opportunity to join residents of our local communities for this afternoon's information session. In particular, I'd like to thank Canada Lands Company and Public Services and Procurement Canada. Certainly, we will be collaboratively working together over a number of years, and I appreciate this opportunity today. Basically, what I'd like to say is this, as Miles said, this is an exciting project. This is an opportunity to develop a master plan for a 25-year development project. And I will be looking for and expecting a collaborative approach with the public, our community stakeholder groups in the immediate area, and across the city who are interested in this project going forward. So we certainly see a significant opportunity here on a very large parcel of land to develop it over time, focusing on modern development. Certainly our transit connections are excellent in this community, and the community really wants to be actively engaged in this process throughout. So yes, there may be some little anxiety about what this might bring, but really we are excited to work collaboratively with the federal government and get going on this project. So thank you to everyone for joining today, and looking forward to working with everyone going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Maintenant, je vais demander à Catherine Constantine, directrice de l'immobilier de la Société immobilière du Canada, de prendre la parole. Catherine, over to you.
Thank you, Suzanne, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Canada Lands Company is a federal crown corporation that specializes in real estate development with the Government of Canada as our sole shareholder. For those of you not familiar with us, you may be asking yourself, what do we do? At Canada Lands, we work to create the best possible outcome for Canadians through our development projects on lands that have been declared surplus to government needs. When we refer to lands that have been declared surplus, it means the government no longer requires these lands and buildings to deliver their services. Here in the nation's capital, a perfect example of this is Water Ridge Village, where we are redeveloping the former CFB Rockcliffe Air Base into a mixed-use community. What makes us different from other Crown corporations that you may know of? For one thing, we have a commercial mandate where we are self-sustaining in the work that we do, and we are subject to all municipal and provincial regulatory approvals. As well, Canada Lands Company does not receive any kind of funding whatsoever from the government. With that being said, we do report to government through the Minister of Public Services and Procurement. We've been in business for over 25 years, delivering community benefits across Canada, and we are thrilled to be working on this collaboration project with the opportunities presented with Confederation Heights. Following this meeting, I invite you to visit our website at clc-sic.ca to learn more about what we do on some of the other projects we are working on here in the nation's capital and also across the country. Focusing on Confederation Heights, we are here today to introduce the master planning process, where we will seek to establish a long-term vision and consider how this area will transform over the coming decades. The Confederation Heights area is a large land area originally planned in the 1950s and 1960s to serve as a federal employment hub. The original design was car-centric and offered little infrastructure to support pedestrians, cyclists, and transit users. We believe we can improve the design and transform it into a more viable mix of uses, and this is why we are here with you today. The key to a successful outcome is you and your participation throughout the public engagement process, and we encourage you to remain engaged throughout. Initiating the conversation today and continuing the conversation over the next few years of this project will assist us in determining how we can realize the potential for Confederation Heights to be a more sustainable mixed-use community. We are asking you to start considering what kind of redevelopment would be appropriate for this site. The master plan process will be informed by many factors, including your priorities, the priorities of various stakeholder groups, along with government and city priorities. The objective is to develop a plan that will meet the needs of our growing city. And how we do this will include several considerations. These include, how can we create something that is more accessible to everyone? And how can we respond to the city's need for better and more affordable housing? And how can we improve key features of the area while respecting the environmental beauty of Vincent Massey and Hogsback Parks? And how can we better connect all of these pieces together? Beginning today, with so many of us gathered here at this virtual table, we look forward to hearing from you and having the first of many conversations over the next couple of years. With the launch of our public engagement platform, you can stay connected and participate throughout the process. We look forward to, however, resuming in-person meetings when it is safe to do so in light of the continuing pandemic. Further along in this presentation, we will review the anticipated timelines for the master plan process, and following that, the actual redevelopment itself is anticipated to take approximately 25 years, where we will continue to call on you for input.
Thank you, Catherine. I would now ask Julie Waddell-Smith, Senior Director for Public Services Procurement Canada, to say a few opening remarks. Julie, la parole est à vous.
Merci, Suzanne. Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour à tout le monde. Je suis ravie d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui. At Public Services and Procurement Canada, one of our central roles is to provide federal departments and agencies with a productive place to work. We also provide corporate services to other government departments, for example, acting as a central purchasing agent, a real property manager, and a treasurer. One of our core mandates is to use the equity, diversity, and inclusion lens in the work that we do. This lens is used in the delivery of PSBC core programs, including the Office Accommodation Program, translation services, purchasing, IT, to name a few.
I think we'll give Julie a moment.
Élaboration du plan directeur des buts de la Confédération. Faisons avancer ce projet. Am I back?
You're back.
OK. Comme Catherine l'a mentionné, la participation de certains groupes de parties prenantes et d'organisations qui promeuvent l'équité, la diversité et l'inclusion sera primordiale dans notre processus d'engagement. Les buts de la Confédération resteront un centre d'emploi fédéral, mais notre objectif est d'améliorer et de renforcer ce centre pour les employés et pour les résidents d'Ottawa. Peut-être que plusieurs d'entre vous y travaillent ou y ont travaillé dans le passé. Le moment consacré à cette élaboration ne pourrait pas être plus opportun. Nous savons que la ville grandit et évolue et nous voulons réaliser le potentiel des buts de la Confédération pour répondre aux exigences de demain. The Government of Canada believes that Confederation Heights needs to move in the direction of that growth and to align itself to a 21st century world. Equally important in the master planning process is to consider Indigenous peoples. We have begun conversations with Indigenous communities, and these conversations will help inform our plans moving forward. Indigenous populations have existed here for thousands of years. Collectivement, nous devons comprendre, apprécier et travailler en tenant compte de ce passé alors que nous envisageons l'avenir. Il existe également de nombreuses considérations patrimoniales en ce qui concerne les gabarits de construction dont vous entendrez parler plus tard dans la présentation d'aujourd'hui. J'ai hâte d'entendre vos réflexions et je vous remercie d'être venus aujourd'hui.
Merci, Julie. Now let's get started. I will ask Julie Carrera to take the floor, but first, a bit of an introduction of the company that was chosen to lead this master planning exercise. Foten Planning and Design are a local firm that specializes in planning, urban design, and landscape architecture. Julie, would you like to introduce your team, please?
Thanks, Suzanne. Foten's excited to be the lead consultant in the development of this master plan. And as you just mentioned, we are providing the urban planning, urban design, and landscape architecture services. So here with me this afternoon, we have Matthew McElligott, a principal of planning and policy at Foten, Hajani Padarats, principal of urban design, and Ute Maya Giambattista, a principal of urban design as well. So Foten is joined by a multidisciplinary team of approximately 20 local sub-consultants who have expertise in a wide range of fields. Some examples include architecture, heritage planning, transportation planning. We have geotechnical, civil, and mechanical engineers on the team. We have environmental planning and sustainability consultants. So there's even more. There's a long list, and I just wanted to give you a taste of who we're working with. So now I'm going to pass it back to Dennis, who's going to be asking our first question to the public.
As mentioned earlier, this is our first opportunity to learn from you this afternoon. On the screen, you are seeing a map of the study area. Just before the question is posted, I'll provide a note to orient you to the area. The intersection of Riverside Drive and Heron Road is centrally located and well known. It has the landmark Canada Post headquarters highlighting the corner. Later in the presentation, you will get a more thorough description, but for now, this should get you started. Bear with me as I bring up the first question on the screen. There it is. So sharpen your digital pencils and let us know what you think. How well do you know the Confederation Heights study area? Very well, reasonably well, not very well, or not at all? I can see we have lots of people providing their responses. Very good.
There's 150 of us here this evening, so should be an interesting result of this particular question.
Well, we have
A few more coming in.
a few more. All right, I think for the purposes of moving on, we've received 108 votes. So perhaps we can end the poll, and we've got, most people know the area very well at 51%. And if you combine reasonably well, 81%. So I think there's a good understanding of where the area is. So thank you, everyone. Now, please close the poll window on your screen so you can continue to follow the slides. I'll be back in a few minutes with another question. Now I'm going to pass it over to Matt McGilligan, Principal of Planning and Policy at FOTEN.
Merci, Denis. La question est donc pourquoi initier un plan directeur maintenant? On compte plusieurs raisons, surtout que plusieurs de documents de politique sont maintenant bien en retard et ne conforment pas aux normes récentes d'urbanisme. Le plan directeur des buts de Confédération remonte à l'année 2000. Il date donc maintenant de 20 ans. Le plan stratégique secondaire pour les buts de la Confédération de la ville d'Ottawa a été approuvé en 1997. Il date donc de 24 ans. Pour ceux d'entre vous qui connaissent bien le secteur, le campus des buts de la Confédération est déconnecté des zones environnantes et offre des liaisons piétonnées limitées. De plus, la zone d'étude donne actuellement la priorité et favorise l'utilisation de la voiture. Récemment, des investissements importants ont été faits pour introduire le transport en commun dans ce secteur, ce qui a permis de modifier les modes de transport. Le CCN exige qu'un plan directeur pour les buts de Confédération afin d'approuver tout développement futur dans le secteur. Finalement, comme vous le verrez sur la prochaine diapositive, la Ville d'Ottawa vient d'approuver un nouveau plan officiel, ce qui nous offre des synergies potentielles et une occasion unique de planifier l'avenir des buts de la Confédération. As many residents are aware, the city has just recently prepared a new official plan. An official plan is a guiding policy document for managing growth, typically for a 20 or 25-year planning horizon. The final draft official plan was endorsed by Council in October, and actually a bylaw was passed yesterday by City Council. The official plan has now been sent to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for their review and approval, which is likely to take place early to mid 2022. So the draft plan designates Confederation Heights as a hub, and that's shown on your screen in light purple. So hubs are the city's most growth-intensive land use designations intended to accommodate greater heights and densities clustered around transit stations. So the hub policies would take precedent over other land use designations. Within the area, there are also some lands designated Main Street Corridor, and these are delineated by the thick dark purple lines, so Bronson and Bank Street in particular, and minor corridors. So these are the thinner, darker purple lines, and these would be Riverside and Heron Road. The draft official plan also identifies an evolving neighborhood overlay, and that's the dotted pattern that you see over top of that land use designation. And this indicates that a transition to a more urban built form is expected to take place over time. Also on the land use schedule, you'll see that light rail transit stations are shown in red circles, and bus rapid transit stations are shown in blue circles. The green space designation is applied along the Rideau River and along Sawmill Creek, north of Heron Road. And of course, volume 2C of the new official plan contains policies specific to Confederation Heights, which will be considered throughout the master planning process. So now I'm just going to walk you briefly through the project timeline. Overall, this master plan is a 4-year project that's going to provide us with ample opportunities for public and stakeholder engagement, either through public engagement sessions, workshops, or through the project website. So we're really only getting started and look forward to listening and working with everyone on this very exciting project. As of today, we're at the project launch stage, so obviously stage number 1. We're working with Canada Lands and PSPC to gather and review information, background documents relating to that study area. During stage 2, we will be drafting master plan concept options. So We're going to reach out through different mediums to gain public input during this very important step. Once a preferred option has been selected, we will prepare a final master plan document that will be taken to the NCC Board of Directors for approval, likely during stage 3. So it's also estimated that the project team will be seeking policy and regulatory approvals during the years 2024 and 2025, as shown on stage 4 here, and shovels in the ground no earlier than 2026. Alors, voici un aperçu de la zone d'étude de 10 000 pieds. Je vais vous fournir un contexte bref de niveau élevé sur la zone d'étude. Les buts de la Confédération sont une zone d'emploi fédérale située à environ 5 km au sud du centre-ville d'Ottawa. La superficie totale de la zone d'étude est de 188 hectares ou 465 acres. Le site est délimité par la rivière Rideau au nord et à l'ouest, le chemin Data Center et le ruisseau Sawmill à l'est, le chemin Brookfield au sud. Comme vous pouvez constater, la zone d'étude comprend également environ 5 km linéaires d'artères de circulation, ce qui en résolument une zone d'étude où l'on circule en voiture. Le long des limites nord et ouest se trouvent plusieurs parcs, donc Hogsback Park et Vincent Massey. Le plan directeur cherchera à permettre la création et l'amélioration des connexions entre les buts de la Confédération et ses parcs. Le plan directeur n'entraînera pas de changement quant à la dimension, à la propriété et à la vocation de ces parcs, et aucun aménagement ne sera proposé sur ces terrains dans le cadre de l'élaboration du plan directeur. Au sein du campus d'emploi fédéral, on trouve une usine de chauffage et refroidissement, ainsi que quelques bâtiments d'importance patrimoniale fédérale dont nous parlerons plus loin dans notre présentation. En fait, le RA Center, situé dans le coin nord-est, fait également partie de la zone d'étude. Alors, ça, c'est la zone d'étude de 10 000 pieds. Now, I'll pass it along to my colleague, Jane Padarats, and she's the principal of urban design here at FOTEN. She's going to walk you through the site history and evolution. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. So I'm Jane Padarats. I'm a principal of urban design at FOTEN. And now I'm going to go through with you a series of slides that really help paint a picture of how Confederation Heights came to be as we know it today. The city area's current layout is really a result of, well, over 100 years of infrastructure projects, such as roads, railways, bridges, even the topography of the site, as well as the Holt and Grabber plans that were developed throughout that period. The land now known as Confederation Heights has been a part of the ancestral territory of the Algonquin Nation since time immemorial. Recent archaeological excavations in the area have identified at least one indigenous campsite in proximity to the Rideau River, containing several artifacts. They're approximately 1,500 years old. They found things such as painted pottery, bone instruments, and those type of things. Other archaeological sites have also been identified near Hogsback Falls, which indicates that there's potential for other areas of archaeological interest throughout the study area. So early settlement in the area starts to appear in the late 18th century. And we see in 1819, Bradish Billings, one of the first settlers to the area, built his log cabin close to what is now the corner of Bank Street and Riverside Drive. A few years later, Billings built a sawmill in a creek that ran through his property. That creek is still known today as Sawmill Creek, and it runs north-south along the eastern edge of the study area. In 1831, Billings also built the first Billings Bridge over the Rideau River, and that's really what gives the area its name that we know it as Billings Bridge today. In the 1820s and 30s, we also see the construction of the Rideau Canal. River Road first appears on maps during this time, and its alignment, as you can see, hasn't really changed much, but we now know it as Riverside Drive. And Heron Road was also laid out during this period as a concession road of the then Gloucester Township. In the 1880s and 90s, we start to see the railway coming in through the site. There's two major spurs that cross the site, and they connected Ottawa to the St. Lawrence River and Napanee regions. Today, both these corridors are still used. One serves the Via Rail Ottawa train station, and the other one was converted to the O train, and is currently being converted to the light rail transit system. In 1915, we see the Holt Plan being published, and it was really this plan that envisioned and designated Crown Ordnance lands to become federal parks in the future. And it's thanks to this plan really that we now see Vincent Massey Park and Hogsback Park. The Holt Plan also called for a bridge to extend Heron Road for urban expansion, and the formalization of Rideau Road as a parkway that we now know as Riverside Drive. As we move towards the I guess, mid-20th century, we see in 1950 the Greber Plan for the national capital being released. It was this plan that led to federal employment development spur over the next couple of decades. And what's really due to this plan that that led to this area becoming a government campus. In 1955, Hogsback Park is implemented as a recreation and scenic park. Between 1960 and 1961, the Sir Charles Tupper Building and Sir Leonard Tilley Building were completed. They were both designed in the modernist style, and these buildings are now recognized federal heritage buildings. In 1964, the former CBC building at 1500 Brownson is inaugurated. It was designed by David Gordon McKinstry and is one of the best examples of modernist architecture on campus. It is the only classified federal heritage building on the study area. In 1969, Heron Road is expanded with Heron Bridge crossing over the Rideau River. And the original, Hogsback Park is subdivided with that bridge, and it was Vincent Massey Park was created. So in 1970s, we see the construction of Airport Parkway. It was envisioned, the Airport Parkway was actually envisioned during the Greber Plan back in the 1950s. It was envisioned at a time as being one of the major entrances to this national capital from the south. In 1970, we also see the CRA Data Center at 875 Heron Road being inaugurated. And this is the third recognized federal heritage building on the campus. In 1990, we see the construction of Canada Post Corporation headquarters building, and that's located at Heron and Riverside. If you're interested to learn more on the history of the sites and the evolution, you can check out the project website under the Learn section. I'll turn over to Dennis now, who will coordinate next couple of questions with you. Thanks.
Thank you, Rajani. The first question, we found out about your familiarity, and now we'll find out how often you come to the park, come to the campus. Is it daily? Is it weekly? Once a month? 2 or 3 times per year? Or never? I see lots of interest again in responding to this. I'm not sure we're going to have a clear-cut winner in this one.
Couple of ties already. Few more people coming in.
All right, voting seems to have slowed down at 100 votes. So perhaps we could end the poll, and between weekly and 2 to 3 times per year, that's the most. So that's interesting. And now we'll go on to the next question.
You have to close the box.
All right, so now which activities currently bring you to Confederation Heights? Vincent Massey or Hogsback Parks? You work there? Maybe you frequent the RA Center? Maybe you live nearby? Or perhaps you're using the multi-use pathways, or there's some other options. So let us know.
Survey says?
Survey says, certainly it looks like the parks and pathways are very high up on the list. And I'm glad to see that we have quite a few people living near the area with us this afternoon.
Yeah.
So with that, we'll move on.
Close your window.
Okay.
So Dennis, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Everyone has closed the poll window, and we can continue to follow the slides. Julie, an associate planner at FOTEN, will go over some of the site context.
Thanks, Dennis. So this graphic shows all the existing and planned transit routes within the study area, which we've already touched on a little bit, but this gives you a clear picture. You can actually see the routes on this graphic. So we have the existing bus rapid transit route that runs in north-south direction, pretty much parallel to Sawmill Creek. It's got a station at Billings Bridge Shopping Center, and then there's another station just north of Heron Road, opposite the CRA building at 875 Heron. So that's the solid blue line that you'll see running along the right-hand side of the graphic. And then there's a second bus rapid transit route that's planned. So it's not yet constructed, but it's planned to cross the study area in an east-west direction. So left to right across the screen in the center of Heron Road. So that's the blue dashed line that you can see. And there's 2 stations planned within the study area. We have one at Riverside and one closer to Airport Parkway. So the environmental assessment for this project is complete, but the timing of construction is currently unknown. Then the third route within the study area is the light rail transit route that's currently under construction. It's part of stage 2 of the city's light rail transit initiative. So that's the red line that you can see crossing the study area sort of on an angle from the northwest to the southeast corner. And there's one station, which was an O-train station. It's being converted to a light rail station. It's near Heron and Airport Parkway. You can see it's also in proximity to one of the planned stations along the bus rapid transit along Heron. So those 2 stations will be near each other. So a large portion of the study area is located within a 400 to 800 meter walking distance from these stations, which is generally considered to be a 5 to 10 minute walk. Go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so this slide shows you the land ownership within the study area. And there's 6 different landowners. So PSPC is the largest landowner, and that's all the lands that are colored in red. And it owns the majority of the land on which the federal government employment is located, as well as the land on which the RA Center is located, as well as portions of Sawmill Creek. We recognize that the RA Center is a stakeholder in this process. The NCC is the second largest landowner, and they own all the land along the Rideau River, so where the 2 big parks are, as well as a little bit of land in Sawmill Creek. So that's the dark pink color. And the master plan process, we're hoping to find ways to improve connections to these areas, to this parkland that's very well used, as we can see from the polls. So Canada Post owns the lands located to the southeast of the intersection of Heron and Riverside Drive, which is that dark purple color. We have Health Canada as a custodian of the rectangular shaped parcel. You can see in orange there on the north side of Brookfield, just west of Airport Parkway. And both Canada Post and Health Canada are recognized as federal stakeholders within the study area. So all the land that is not colored on this plan is owned by the City of Ottawa. So that includes the municipal roads, such as Riverside Drive, Heron Road, and Airport Parkway, including all the on and off ramps to that road. And finally, the last landowner we have here is CN Rail, and they own that rail line along the eastern edge of the study area, which runs parallel to Sawmill Creek. So that's the one that Via Rail currently uses. So I'm going to pass it over to Catherine, who's going to speak to some other engagement.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, so to date, the project team has done a series of initial consultations with stakeholders and engagement with Indigenous groups to invite them to participate and contribute to the master plan process. Our preliminary conversations have assisted us to identify major constraints and required studies, to understand the visions for the lands not owned by PSPC, and to also understand visions for long-term lease tenants. Also to identify synergies and opportunities. For everyone, one example of a government tenant within the study area is the RA Center. I will now pass it over to Dennis, who will introduce question pool number 4.
Thank you, Catherine. On this question, some of the responses are longer. So to ensure you see the full answer in both languages, you may need to hover your pointer over the response. So now we want to find out what you like about this area of the city. Is it the proximity to large parks, the Rideau River and nature? Is it access to the NCC pathways and experimental farm? The proximity to Carleton University and Old Ottawa South, the RA Center, or some other reason? The votes are piling in once again.
Other seems to be gaining some traction as well.
We may have to follow up with those
Yes,
respondents to find out what that is.
we want to hear from you on that, folks.
So we've received 100 votes. So perhaps we can end the poll at this point. And it looks like certainly the parks and the pathways and the farm are the leading points of interest. So thank you, everyone. Now, please close the poll window on your screen so you can continue to follow the slides. Julie will now go over some opportunities and constraints of the study area that we are aware of from our work to date.
Great, thanks, Dennis. So this slide provides a high-level overview of some of the key opportunities and constraints in the study area that we've come across to date. So in terms of opportunities, as we've discussed in detail, there's been a significant investment in public transit in this area, which provides an opportunity for some transit-oriented development, or TOD. You might have heard that term before. And that's basically a mix of moderate to high density transit supportive land uses that are within an easy walk of transit and are oriented and designed to facilitate transit use. We also have the large publicly accessible parkland along the Rideau River, owned by the NCC, as we saw in a previous slide. And these parks have a number of amenities, such as picnic tables, the bandstand, the refreshment stands, trails, and open space. So we'd really like to focus on improving connections to and from that space from the federal employment component of the campus. We have the RA Center, which is another asset. It was originally established to serve the public sector workforce, but it is now a member-supported not-for-profit recreational facility, which I'm sure many of you have visited in the past. The study area also benefits from a number of buildings and structures which the federal government has identified as being of heritage importance. So we've already gone over the 3 recognized and 1 classified building within the employment hub. But just of note, there's also a few other structures in the study area. The refreshment stand and the washrooms at Hogsback Park are recognized, and the Heritage bus stop and concession stand in Vincent Massey Park are also recognized. So lastly, there's a lot of land within the study area that's not yet developed and could potentially accommodate additional buildings, bringing more residents and more jobs to the area. So this would make Confederation Heights a bit more vibrant at all times of the day, not just when employees are going to work. It would also serve to make more efficient use of the existing infrastructure that's already there: roads, transit, municipal services, social infrastructure. So in terms of constraints in the study area, I think most of us know it is the federal employment component is a single use. So it's actively used during business hours, and it's not as active off hours and evenings and weekends. And as has also been noted, it was designed at a time when the automobile took precedence. So while there are some pedestrian and cyclist connections, they could be improved, especially from an accessibility perspective. So now I'm going to pass it on to Ute from FOTEN, who's going to walk us through a series of slides on what a master plan is.
Thank you so much, Julie. I'm Ute Maria Giambattista, Principal of Urban Design at FOTEN. So you may be asking yourself, what is a master plan and how can I help? A master plan is a long-term visioning document, usually spanning a 25 to 50-year horizon. It looks at how the campus and its totality could be developed and what should be the key guiding principles that future development must follow to guarantee the vision comes to fruition. At the heart of a master plan visioning process, such as this one, is the implementation of a community that maintains and builds on the site's distinctive and uniqueness, such as the heritage buildings and the iconic landscapes and open spaces that characterize Confederation Heights. A master plan delivers a community that's anchored in its character with a clear sense of place and identity. Finally, a master plan includes a high-level phasing strategy based on existing constraints and identified opportunities and for synergies. So the image you see on the screen, the Westgate image, illustrates how long-term phasing in an envisioned any given block can happen where new buildings are located in relation to their synergies and to existing buildings and surrounding context. So it's not, it will be different in our context, but that's the idea. A master plan also must be flexible for changing needs over time. If anything, COVID has taught us that in a very short time, priorities and how we work, we shop and use open spaces, or even enjoy nature and commute can change. The image you see, it's a series of vignettes illustrating how the same open space can be used by the public in very different ways. Next image, please. A master plan is also a holistic endeavor. Intrinsic to it is the fundamental concept of a comprehensive review of all the different elements informing the site. Using a sustainability lens, the core principle at its core, it considers how existing and future street networks work, how existing and future parks and open spaces relate, establishes density targets and land uses, provides clear connections to and from transit and between spaces, and considers accessibility, pathways, and social settings. On the example of Quayside Master Plan in Toronto, you can see that the project team looked at the site systems and how they overlay and interact with each other. A similar exercise will be done for the Confederation Heights Master Plan. Next slide, please. A master plan also develops, among others, a framework for land use, build form, and density. It identifies where each land use or mix of uses should be placed. It establishes the parameters for future build form and that results in a pedestrian-friendly environment, or defines a new network and hierarchy of open spaces that obviously respond to its context. This image from the Canada Lands project at Wateridge is a good example of what the outcome of this exercise may look like. As you can see, denser and taller buildings are located in proximity to high transit streets, like and the colors in the deep red, while mid-block, centrally located, define a new centrality to the community, and a series of open spaces interconnect throughout the community. Next slide, please. Finally, a master plan is anchored on public and stakeholder input. In that, input from different communities and stakeholders provides guidance to the project team to better understand how the site is experienced by all, as well as to help understand expectations as the site evolves. Public and stakeholder input then helps to deliver a comprehensive and sustainable design. I will now ask Dennis to take over to go over the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Ute, and to the entire FOTEN team for your presentation. It's a great starting point for our conversation about the future of Confederation Heights. Let's remember that we are at step one and don't have all the answers yet, which is why we need your help now. For more information, please visit the project website at engage.clc-sic.ca/realize the potential. These addresses and contact information will also be provided, we'll provide it in the chat line later on, as well as a slide coming up. To help us answer a few more questions, such as what are the key themes and guiding principles that should drive the master planning process? How do you envisage Confederation Heights in the future? Is there anything else we should know when developing the new master plan? And as we heard it report, we'll be prepared coming out of this public engagement session. So you'll be able to see everyone's comments and see what has been talked about to date. You can, on the website, register to receive updates, and we anticipate coming back to you in spring with a workshop session to get additional feedback from you on our preliminary thinking. You can connect with us by email, telephone, or mail.
Pardon. Merci, Dennis. Tout d'abord, nous avons besoin de votre aide. Veuillez visiter le site web du projet participons.clc-sic.ca, réaliser le potentiel pour consulter le matériel présenté aujourd'hui et répondre à quelques questions supplémentaires. Quels sont les thèmes clés et les principes directeurs qui devraient guider le processus du plan directeur? Comment envisagez-vous les buts de la Confédération à l'avenir? Et y a-t-il autre chose que nous devrions savoir lors de l'élaboration du nouveau plan directeur? Ce sont des questions qu'on aimerait vous poser et que vous allez retrouver aussi sur le site web. Bref, à noter que le rapport sur ce que nous avons entendu sera préparé et distribué. Il comprendra vos idées, vos commentaires, discutés durant les sessions comme celle-ci d'aujourd'hui. S'il vous plaît, inscrivez-vous pour recevoir des mises à jour. Nous comptons vous revenir au printemps avec un atelier afin de recueillir vos réactions sur nos premières pistes de réflexion. Vous pouvez nous contacter par courriel, par téléphone ou par courrier. Nous allons maintenant commencer la discussion de groupe. Dennis, over to you.
Thank you, Suzanne. We now want to hear from you. As was mentioned earlier, we will open the chat so your questions and comments can be seen by all. Please write your questions in the Zoom chat in either English or French. Our team will read out and answer the questions. Remember though, we may have summarized similar questions into one, but don't worry, we have all of the questions recorded as asked. As well, feel free to raise your virtual hand using the reaction button at the bottom of your screen if you would like to ask a question in person. Wait until we acknowledge you so you can unmute your microphone at the appropriate time. Please remember to lower your hand in the same way after you speak. You are also welcome to ask questions and/or make comments through the project website with the addresses shown on your screen, via email, and we will respond to you directly.
Vous pouvez maintenant écrire vos questions dans la zone de clavardage de Zoom en anglais ou en français. Notre équipe lira vos questions et y répondra. N'hésitez pas à lever la main si vous souhaitez poser une question. Nous vous donnerons la parole afin que vous puissiez activer votre microphone au moment opportun. N'oubliez pas de baisser la main par contre, de la même façon après avoir parlé. Vous pouvez également poser des questions par le site du projet web, comme vous le voyez sur la diapositive à l'écran, par courriel but.confédération@clc-sic.ca. Nous vous répondrons directement. I will ask our colleague under the name of questions, Manon, or Dennis. Can you please provide the first questions and or comment from the chat line? Manon, would you like to start?
I would. We received a lot of great questions, and so we'll get started. The first one is there an opportunity to sell Sawmill Creek land for purposes of building a pedestrian bridge that would join Heron Park and Village Bridge Station? Is that even a possibility?
Well, I guess to start with, anything's a possibility, and so we need to explore these options. So it's a very good question, and certainly connection into Billings Bridge and the rapid transit stations that are located there would be a good opportunity. Perhaps Julie Waddell-Smith, could you respond to this?
Absolutely. Great question. I personally think there is tremendous opportunity for Sawmill Creek, and these are excellent ideas. So please make sure to go to the website and write them down. I think that this is an area that hasn't been very well thought of or used perhaps, and there might be some really interesting community benefits that might be able to come out of it. So, so thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, Julie. Next question is, there's significant traffic in around Confederation Heights, making it look like a highway for motorists, but not very inviting for pedestrians. How will you build out the area, and will you have design plans that will be more inviting for pedestrians?
Again, some astute observations, probably from someone who gets stuck at the intersection there on their way to and from work. The area does, certainly part of the study will include an assessment of the transportation and with an eye towards more sustainable and more active modes. But perhaps Julie Carrera at FOTEN could provide a bit more.
Thanks, Dennis. Yeah, you've already touched upon it. So we do have some experts on our team. We have CGH Transportation, who look at all forms of transportation, but primarily vehicular transportation. And then we also have an active transportation consultant, that's ALTA, Planning and Design. And we also have an accessibility consultant, which is Accessibility Simplified. So we do have we have quite a few people with lots of experience in those areas, so that we can ensure that ultimately the master plan does provide for pedestrian cyclist connections and improve, there's always going to be some vehicular traffic, but it's definitely key to this area. There are some challenges and we're hoping to improve them through the master plan.
If I might add, speaking from a public service and procurement perspective, one of the things we've heard loud and clear from employees is that they would really like to have improved pedestrian and biking access in and through the site. So certainly from a federal employee perspective, that's something that we would really like to see, but I see that it could broaden to infrastructure and connecting in with some of those wonderful parks and amenities. So yes, it's something that we will definitely be taking a close look at.
Just a little further to that, also I'd like to add, so obviously we acknowledge, priority to pedestrian cycling, and the site is well served in future by transit. But all of you today joining us, please share your experiences when in and around the area, and also your frustrations as well. We'd like to hear that on ways in where we can look for improvements. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Catherine and Julie. Suzanne, a couple more in the chat, and then maybe we'll go with the hand raised.
Okay.
This is a question of clarification on one of the slides, the transportation slide. Isn't there a planned station along Heron Baseline BRT that would be near the existing Heron station? Julie Carrera, if you can just clarify that.
Yeah, I don't know if we could flip back. Trying to find what slide number that was. That's slide number 23. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 23. So we do have the planned bus rapid transit corridor the city has planned along the center of Heron Road. Sorry, could you repeat the question in terms of where the station location is?
Is there a planned station along the Heron Baseline BRT that would be near the existing Heron station of the transit way? I think there's a word missing there, but yeah.
Okay, I see what you mean. So the current station on the current bus rapid transit route is the current bus rapid transit route is that solid blue line. That's exactly. And then the blue dot along that route is the existing station, which is just opposite 875 Heron. So that's the current bus rapid transit. And then going east-west, yeah, I see the other two stations are further west from there. But I know if you also go back to the City of Ottawa's new official plan, which is slide 13, you'll see some dots. There's a red dot with blue around them. So I do believe there's going to be some integration between all these networks. I think when there's the two colors, it means that, they might not be directly next to each other, but there is some sort of connection between them. So we'd have to reach out to the city for more details on that.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Julie. There are a couple of hands up.
Yeah.
The first one was from Sandy. Could you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
When I sent this in the chat as well. When Matthew McKelligot was speaking, he was speaking French. I was listening to the English translation, and I heard the statement, "There will be no new buildings," which, is that true?
So I was talking in reference to the park spaces. So Vincent Massey and Hogsback Park, just to clarify, because it is shown on the study area, and I just don't want to be misleading. We're not proposing any new buildings within the NCC parkland. So I think it was just to clarify that if that helps.
Yeah, okay, so there will be no new buildings on what the current Vincent Massey Park and Hogsback Park. However, there will be new buildings on the other parts of the parcel.
So yeah, we're not intervening on NCC lands. I think maybe is a more direct way of putting it. So the other lands that were shown as part of the ownership map that Julie went through. So the PSPC lands, for example, that were kind of located abutting or in proximity to those NCC lands would potentially be lands for redevelopment. But anything, yeah, great, thank you for putting it up on the slide. Anything that's shown in purple and would be, no buildings. Of course, that's very important asset in parkland for not only the direct community, but citywide. These are destinations that are extremely important, as evidenced by the poll. So thanks for the question. I think it's great that you asked that, because it's certainly important to clarify that that the NCC lands will remain NCC lands and parkland and green space.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we'll go to Denis now. Denis, if you would like to ask your question, your hand is up.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you very much for the excellent presentation to kind of put us in the picture in terms of what are the upcoming and long-term plans with respect to what many of us here who actually live here consider to be kind of a hidden secret and a gem. So I suppose my first surprise was when I heard you say that on at least two occasions that the area is disconnected. As residents here, I certainly can't speak for everyone, but the last thing I feel here is disconnected. In fact, one of the reasons that we live here is because we are connected. We're connected to the airport. We're easily connected to downtown via Bank, via Bronson, via Prince of Wales. We're connected east-west through Hunt Club. We're connected east-west through Heron Road. So we feel very well connected. Now, I must admit, this is a car-centric approach to living, as you've correctly mentioned. But I just wanted to highlight that, because there's a certain risk in taking a place which is already, in my own view, connected, and try to connect it to everything in every which way, and therefore to completely transform this neighborhood and this area, which contains so many gems. So I don't want to become overly connected, I suppose, is my way of saying it. And I don't know what you're going to do with it, but I thought I'd throw that out before too many people get on the bandwagon that they're going to do a whole bunch of things because the place is disconnected, when there are many of us who don't feel that way. So that's my first comment. My second comment is you're leading a very very difficult and super interesting long-term project, with tons of acres attached to it. That means that, given the stakeholders you've identified, you will have some real competing interests that are trying to have their voice resonate and to influence you in whichever direction you'll end up going. That's real life. I recognize that. I would like you to not underestimate the voice of the actual residents. What you're talking about here is the development of an area where people actually live. There are people who come and enjoy Mooney's Bay Park, lots of them actually, from inside and outside of the area, which I guess is another demonstration that we're not that disconnected, because there's tons of people who come here who don't live in the area. But it's just my word of advice is not to underestimate and to undervalue particularly the voice of the residents, because we actually live here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Denis, for your comments. And of course, they are recorded. This meeting is recorded. And so everything that you have said will definitely be part of our report. I think we need to move to another question, however, because we have quite a few people that are waiting to ask. So Dennis, would you like to read over the next one from the chat?
The chat? Sure. Early on, there was a question from Deborah with respect to the the aspects of flooding based on the catastrophic flooding in BC? Will there be a flood risk report as part of the master plan? Julie, could you respond to that?
So that was not something that is part of the scope of this project. As Matt mentioned, excuse me, the areas where there potentially may be interventions, potentially new buildings, is removed from the Rideau River. It's further east where you see the Federal Heritage or the employment campus. So no, it was not. We have no plans to make any alterations to the NCC parkland along the river. So no, it was not. It is not part of our scope.
If I may, I just might add on to that, however, that from a federal government perspective, one of the things that is informing us is the federal sustainable development strategy, which looks at a number of things, including sustainability, resiliency, which is, I think, what is being asked about in the question about the flood zone, and then also greenhouse gas reduction. So certainly this is a lens that we will be taking as we review the master plan to look at how can this site continue to be resilient in the face of climate change.
And just a little further to that, I can say with the work that we do with regards to design guidelines on future lands is implementing such things such as low impact development. So definitely thank you for your comment, and it is something that we will be looking at.
Thank you, Catherine, and Julie as well, and other Julie. Moving along, we have quite a few hands that are up now, and we also have questions that date back to 306. So how about we answer this one? How is the RA Center envisaged to fit in the plan? And I think Julie Waldell-Smith, this is one for you.
Yes, thank you. Great question. We love the RA centers, and we know that a lot of people really do like the RA Center, and they've been a very huge part of the community for a long time. So we are working with the RA Center, and we do recognize them as an important stakeholder in the process. So what we will be doing is we will be looking to align some of the vision and strategy that RA Center already has in place with the vision and strategy as it develops for the master plan. Certainly, I think there is an opportunity for synergies. For those of you who are familiar with the RA Center, they do have some great plans in place. And so we'll be looking to see how we can align those. Just a small additional note. At this point, there's still lots more work to do on this. However, what we're thinking is, the buildings as they stand, that will continue. However, we would like to be able to look at opportunities in and around some of the site to be able to fulfill some of these other important objectives for the site, whether it be affordable housing or other sort of opportunities of that nature. There might be still an opportunity to be able to support a vibrant recreation space in addition to some additional uses.
Is it too soon to ask this question? Which buildings are you planning on demolishing? Is this something that we need to get through in the master plan and do more studying before that decision is made? Would you agree, Julie?
Yeah, I would. It's a very good question, and I think that it is too early. In some cases, so PSPC does have investment plans and a portfolio strategy in place for all of its assets, but that's something that we will be continuing to look at and refine over the next couple of years alongside with the master plan to look at either modernization of buildings, because certainly there is an importance, and we are seeing to have modern office space. So, the federal government is looking to reinvest in some buildings. However, there might be some buildings that were built at a time, for example, that was before there were standards, seismic standards, for example, and some cases where things might be a bit more challenging. So we'd have have to weigh those carefully. But I guess long story short, it's still early days, and that is something that will be looked at in the over the next couple of years as the master plan evolves.
Good, thank you. I'll take one more question from the chat, and then Dennis, I'm going to ask you to have one of the raised hands speak. So the question from the chat, are there plans to have a pedestrian cycling bridge across the Rideau River to connect to the main academic buildings at Carleton University? So perhaps Julie Carrera, I'd like to maybe send that one your way.
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, I don't have the exact details, but I do know that I believe there is a plan to have a bridge heading north towards Carleton University. So we will be looking at those plans and investigating further as part of the master plan process.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go to Catherine for a question from the virtual floor, and after that we're going back to our question person in the chat line because there were some earlier questions posted as well. All right, Catherine, if you could unmute your microphone.
I'm unmuted.
Oh, no, Catherine Nelson.
Catherine Nelson, yeah.
Thanks for taking my call. Yeah, I'm really interested in the concept of the flooding again. The area all along the river where the RA is certainly a floodplain. It's a question of, you know, what floodplain is it? Is it the 1 to 50 year? Is it the 1 to 100 year? Is it the 1 to 200 year? And for those of us who follow these things, we know now that, you know, the 1 to 100 year that we used to think was, you know, wouldn't happen very often. In some parts of the country and the world, it's happening a lot more often. So in fact, the RA Center is on a floodplain, and I think there was a pretty dramatic flood at the corner of Bank Street and Riverside not too many years ago. And so really, if the RA Center needs a lot of investment, which I think it does, like millions of dollars, the concept of putting a lot of money into the RA Center and it's on the floodplain wouldn't be such a great idea. And so I would really recommend to Canada Lands that it look at the terms of reference for the planning of this situation and really recognize that and think about maybe the location of the RA and how that land could be used as a sustainable both a floodplain and recreation land, because it still can be used for a lot of the purposes of recreation, but maybe not invest in the actual buildings there, maybe put the building somewhere else. And I'm a huge fan of the RA where it is. I just love where it is. But I think for the long term, it's probably not the best place to have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Catherine. We have something here in the chat line, but you said, Dennis, we would go back to Manon. Manon, would you like to tell us what you found in your
Thank you.
chat?
So some early questions that we've received. One of them is, can you elaborate on which Indigenous groups you've consulted so far and any shortcomings you see in consideration with the master plan?
So I can take the question. So far, we have met with the Algonquins of Ontario, and we've had early discussions with the Algonquin Anishinaabeg Tribal Council, so representatives from that organization. So in many cases, it's still early days. What I would like to say is that I really believe that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for Algonquin and other Indigenous partners, whether in the planning stage of the master plan or in the 25-year implementation period after. So this is something that certainly from a federal priority and a values perspective, we are very much focused on, and we would really like to see what opportunities exist. In terms of the second question, I would need it repeated, but perhaps with a little bit more context, because I wasn't sure if it was related to the who have you talked to?
It is, Julie, it was in relation to any shortcomings you see within the master plan based on your consultations with Indigenous.
Yeah. So again, early days, you know, we're very open to meeting with the different communities to see what kind of partnerships we might be able to put in place, again, whether it's over the planning period or over the longer term. Great question. Thank you.
Manon, do you have any other questions you'd like to pose?
We talked about, there's a question here about greenhouse gas emission reductions and eco-resilient communities. But Julie Waddell Smith, I think you addressed that when you talked about the government's resiliency plan. Did you want to add another word or two on that?
Yeah, so if people are interested, great question, very topical, coming out of the recent COP conference. As people know, this is very much a priority of the federal government to look at climate resiliency. So if you aren't familiar with the federal plan, you might take a look. It's a Treasury Board plan for the environment and the Federal Sustainable Development Strategy. So it looks at a number of priorities and goals, including climate resiliency, including greenhouse gas reduction, and also including energy reduction. So these are things that we are being measured on from a Government of Canada perspective, and certainly we're looking to put in place for all of our federal assets, and we'd like to see that translated also into some of the site redevelopment. Great question, thank you.
Manon, do you have any other ones?
If only I'm not on mute. Thank you, Suzanne. I have one more, and that's Canada Lands' and PSPC's plans for wildlife management during the development process.
So okay. I can start, and then maybe someone can continue. So we have, on a small parcel by parcel basis, we have started to look at, there are a significant amount of environmental site assessments that have been completed. For people who know this, there are various depths of studies. And we also complete what's called a species at risk study. So this has been done on certain parcels of the land, and with it, then there will be a strategy that will be put in place for dealing with any species at risk or wildlife. However, that was on very much like a parcel by parcel basis for PSPC. And what we're looking to do with the consultant team now is have a more holistic one that looks more broadly at the site to make sure that that nothing has been missed, and then also to see if there's other areas of sensitivity that would need to be considered in any redevelopment activities.
Thank you. Matt or Julie, would you like to add to that?
I could add just that Kilgore and Associates is the sub-consultant that's been retained as part of our group to look into species at risk, as Julie had mentioned. You know, a lot of the field work actually has already been undertaken, but because it is so seasonal, they're going to have to go back at different points throughout the year, excuse me, including next spring, to investigate different species. So it is an ongoing investigation, and there will be reports prepared as part of the master plan, but certainly it's something that we're looking at, in addition to having an arborist go out there and catalog all the trees as well. So it's not only species, but also tree species as well. So great question. I mean, it's obviously a very, very important element of the plan, and something we want to enhance and preserve for everyone's enjoyment. So thanks.
Great, thank you. All right, we're back into the chat line. Dennis, can you read the next question that you see?
Actually, I think I'll take the question from the floor and then go back to the chat.
All right.
Lucas has had his hand up for some time. So perhaps, Lucas, if you could unmute and ask your question.
Sure, thanks very much, everyone, for the presentation today. Kind of been doubling up in the chat and here as well. So I primarily wanted to know if, kind of building off of the discussion of species at risk studies, there's the projects to be subjected to a federal impact assessment. If there just could be any elaboration on that, or that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. So in this case, we're subject to both the federal and the provincial the standards in terms of environmental. So anything that the federal doesn't catch, the provincial will catch, and then the provincial to the federal. So yes, it is a very important part. We're working closely with the National Capital Commission, and that is a key element that's required to support the eventual approval of a master plan, or to at least put it forward for approval. So this is something that the National Capital Commission keeps, that certainly they'll make sure that that requirement is fulfilled. So I hope that answers your question, but very good question.
If I just may quickly add, I just want to also mention that there is a municipal approval process as well, and so it's all 3 levels of government actually that are going to be assessing these things. So I mean, great question. Again, very topical and super important. Happy you asked it.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
All right, from the chat line, Dennis.
Yes, there are a number of comments that have been registered or aren't necessarily questions, and you can be sure that we'll be covering those in the As You Heard It report, or As We Heard It report. So the first question that I think is relatively hasn't been answered at this point is from Erwin. And it's, so do I understand correctly that the general idea is to move from the current one use to a mixed use plan, i.e. there would be some residential development, and there are some other questions further on in the chat that also talk about residential. So perhaps Catherine Constantine, you could talk to that.
Yes, absolutely. So as part of this process, and we know that this will be in a federal employment node, but as we work with you as part of this process, there will be opportunities for lands to be declared surplus, of which CLC would then take those through the municipal approval process. Again, all as part of the master plan being approved and working with PSPC, being approved by the NCC, and then CLC would follow through with those surplus lands, which would include a mix of uses. And again, to everyone's point, we are subject again to municipal and provincial regulatory approvals. So there is a reporting as part of that process that we would be doing as well. So I hope I've answered that question.
Catherine, maybe you just want to talk a little bit about, this would be a good opportunity to talk about affordable housing, because that is also one of the goals that we're looking to achieve through the process.
Yes, absolutely. So in the work that CLC does, and typically we do include an affordable housing component. On our other projects, we have implemented a 10% affordable housing component. Here in the work that we're doing with PSPC as part of this master plan, we'd be looking to work with the City of Ottawa and through the Federal Lands Initiative to determine the appropriate delivery and definition for affordable housing with this master plan. And if I can also clarify, opportunity there for it to be realized, whether it's rental units and or ownership units in the work that CLC does, and I can use Water Ridge as an example of that, various different types of dwellings and offering opportunity for various different price points. Again, so thank you.
On that, question from Deborah, how many residents are projected to be in this area? Catherine, do you want to answer that one?
I think we really still are preliminary on that.
Yes.
We know obviously PSPC with their employment use, but we really are still early in the stages to determine that.
Okay, thank you. From Martin, what latitude is there to reconfigure existing roads and rail lines to enable redevelopment? Very good question. Julie, would you like to answer that one? Julie Waddell-Smith?
Sure, I'll start. So certainly we see a tremendous opportunity for potentially working with the roads. I think we heard a comment earlier about the high speed, of traffic and so on. Maybe for the residents, they like the high speed because it allows them to quickly connect. But certainly there have been some early discussions with the City of Ottawa. Really, it would be up to the City of Ottawa to see what they would what they would support. So it'll be interesting to see as we continue dialogue with the city on what might be possible. Maybe Catherine has more to add to that.
Yeah, and again, so depending on the master plan and future phases of work, but yeah, where we could see if there is going to be, obviously we know federal employment node, but a mix in of different residential uses. So there may be opportunity there for internal roadways. So still to be determined, and we really are preliminary right now.
Thank you. Matt, did you want to add anything to that?
Just the one element, because it did speak to the roadway, but also the rail lines. And of course, there's the LRT, which is under construction right now. So there's no appetite to, shift that infrastructure around. And of course, there's the CN the Via Rail line, and those would probably be staying as it is because they do serve a wider purpose in terms of transportation within the city, but also on a regional scale as well. So the rail the rail lines will stay as is.
Okay, thank you. We've got 20 minutes left to our session, and we've got 21 more messages. There seems to be quite a bit of chat about Sawmill Creek. So why don't I read Xavier's comment? I believe that whether a crossover at Sawmill Creek would destroy the fragile environment is up for a comprehensive study rather than a simple assumption. As well, a pedestrian bridge across Sawmill Creek would likely have significantly less impact on this ecosystem than the existing bridges at Bank Street and Heron Road, which cross the creek and abruptly fracture this ecosystem. Would you like to perhaps give us some comment on that, Matthew?
Sure. It is a really great question, and it's something that we're exploring in terms of that Sawmill Creek corridor. There hasn't been any discussions at all to date about, any kind of pedestrian crossing. It just hasn't been on our radar quite yet. Understanding that there is an ecosystem there that we need to take into account for. We have our sub-consultants that are actually studying the area. We're mapping it through survey plans. So, it's a very, it's a very complex area. Obviously, it does have an ecological purpose. And there are some, as Julie noted earlier, there's some steep slopes there to consider as well. So it's not a foregone conclusion that anything is going to happen in that area. It may just remain as is. But again, I think it's something that we're going to look at because it does form part of the study area, and hopefully leave it at that. Hopefully that answers your question a little bit, but I understand that you're probably looking for more answers at this point. It's just way too early to tell.
Okay, thank you. The existing infrastructure, this one's from Linda. The existing infrastructure is why we don't need another crossing. Further, the Heron Park community has had discussion on this issue in the past. Please contact the Community Association for History on this issue. We definitely will, Linda. We've just started the conversation with you, and we are going to have lots of them. So thank you for that comment. From George Brown, under construction as we speak.
I think there's lots of back and forth with
Yeah,
respect to the crossing and
yeah, it's that was in relation to the pedestrian crossing from Carleton University into Vincent Massey Park. That's actually being worked on as we speak.
Okay.
Now my hand is up for another thing after.
Well, why don't you go ahead since you've got the floor?
Very quickly, the district heating plant that's there, is there any thought going to be given to using district heating throughout the whole redevelopment? Is that something that might be looked at?
Julie?
Yes, thank you. Great question. We do have significant investment happening right now in the district heating and cooling system. So if one can imagine that was put in place in the 1950s when the site was first developed, and so it did need to be upgraded. So currently there has been, if you see little fences all around the site, that's for the upgrading of all the lines and new, and I'm going to use a technical word here, heat exchangers, so the thing that brings the heat to the buildings. So there's been a lot of work happening over the last couple of years on that. One of the next, that's the first phase of the district heating and cooling. The next phase is that they'll be looking at they've hired on a company to start looking at how could this work as a utility? Because right now, this is one of the questions that's more complicated. PSBC doesn't have a mandate to act as a utility, but we do see the opportunity to be able to provide district heating and cooling. For people who don't know, it is a system that's used quite often in different parts of Europe, like in Paris and Copenhagen, where a lot of buildings are connected to it, and it is considered very sustainable. So certainly we'll be looking for opportunities if we can to leverage the system that is in place. Don't know if that answers your question, but it was a really good question.
No, that's good. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, George. We'll go to Anouk now, and after that, Dennis is going to be posing you another question. So Anouk, will BIRD safe design be required for all new buildings and retrofits, including residential? And I think I will give that question to Julie Carrera.
Thanks for the question. So the City of Ottawa does have bird-friendly design guidelines, and any future development, if land is disposed of and it is developed, it would go through the municipal approvals process. So that is one document that would have to be considered through that process.
Great, thank you. All right, Dennis, I'm sending it over to you for the next question.
All right. Yes, we are coming up close to the end of the scheduled time, but and we will still keep track of all of the comments that we have seen in the chat line, and encourage you to continue to post things even after the event is over, so that on the website or by email, so that we can stay in touch as this process moves forward. But for now, we'd like to get a little bit of background on how you learned about today's session. Was it by word of mouth, newspaper ad, counselor's office, Canada Post unaddressed mail? There was a postcard sent out, my community association, stakeholder group, or some other way? Please let us know so that we can make sure that we optimize our contacts in the community.
It's quite diverse.
Yes. We've got
65 respondents.
66. I think some people may have dropped off the call, so perhaps we can end the poll at that point. It
seems like Canada Post was the winner.
Canada Post and the stakeholder groups.
Yep.
So thank you very much. Now, please close the poll window on your screen so we can continue to follow the slides for the closing aspects of this session.
While we're doing that, Irwin had an idea that was considered 25 years ago and remains relevant. The Heron Riverside corner is ideally suited to be a transit hub, better than Billings Bridge, really. It would be ideally suited to serve Confederation Heights and the surrounding communities. So thank you for that comment, Irwin. From Lynn, we have, is Canada Land subject to the Federal Sustainable Development Strategy of the Treasury Board? Catherine, would you like to answer that?
So we do follow government with regards to goals and initiatives with sustainability. So we will be working with PSPC with regards to sustainability and implementing it here within this master planning process.
Perfect. From Cameron, is there expected to be a reduction in the land area devoted to vehicle storage?
The proverbial parking lot.
Aha, that's what I thought. So who would like to answer that question? Is it too early to call, or Julie, would you like?
Yeah,
Yes,
I
Julie
think it's
Waddell?
much too early to say. I mean, we're just really starting from a federal government point of view. We're still looking at, what this means for us in terms of lands, that will be maintained for core federal office programs. But it's a great question and something definitely we'll need to think through carefully as the master plan proceeds.
Okay. A nice long one here from Elizabeth. What if baseline road transit is not funded prior to 2025? How will this impact your master plan, a foundation for new official plan intensification? And B, what coordination will you have with the baseline rapid transit corridor public consultation coming up as an outcome of the NOP approval? Finally, how will the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority and Parks Canada be engaged in the consultation to ensure our water systems management and our waterways are respected through this master plan? Oh, and finally, what studies of the water systems will be undertaken, water, wastewater, stormwater systems, as part of this master plan to ensure safety of residents, pedestrians, cyclists, drivers, property owners, properties, roads, and waterways? So that's a loaded one. Matthew, I think I'll ask you about that one. Matthew or Julie?
I have some thoughts as well. So
okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Julie, and I can supplement as needed.
Okay, so I can see the question here, so I'm just gonna answer each part. So the baseline road transit corridor. So as I noted, the environmental assessment has been completed, except the exact timing is unknown. Although I do understand from a council meeting recently on the new official plan that it will be, or is planned to be, prioritized. But if it does not happen prior to 2025, we do have the existing bus rapid transit corridor, the one with the stop at Billings Bridge and across from 875 Heron. And I believe the light rail transit route, these dates always change, but I believe we're only a couple years away from that stage 2 opening. So we do have those two routes, and in the event that Heron is even further into the future. So no matter what, we do have lots of transit opportunities here. Second part, so we will make sure that we are part of that baseline bus rapid transit corridor consultation. We'll make sure we attend and are informed of what's happening there. The Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. So actually this kind of relates back to the question about floodplain. So they are the ones who regulate floodplains. They map the floodplains and it gets translated into the City of Ottawa zoning bylaw. So we do hope that they're part of the process. There will be a technical advisory committee and hopefully they'll be a part of that. There's also a mention to Parks Canada. So that's a great suggestion to have them involved as well. And then lastly, in terms of what types of studies are going to be undertaken. So we do have a civil engineering consultant on our consulting team, which is David Schaefer Engineering, and they will be looking at everything you listed here. So water, wastewater, and stormwater, that's their expertise. And they will be analyzing the area and feeding into our master plan.
Great.
Thank you,
Julie.
If I could just interject for a moment, there's been quite a bit of discussion in the chat line regarding question 5. The results are being reshown on the screen. This is regrettably the technical aspect doesn't allow us to re-ask the question, but I think there was a sufficient response from the people that were able to access the question to provide the information we need. So thank you very much, and next time we'll leave it up a little longer.
Yeah, and I'd like to add that all of these questions are also posted on the website or will be posted on the website. So once you go to our platform and engage with us, you will see all of the questions that we posed today are going to be posted there as well and more. So we really hope that you will, if you didn't get a chance to answer it this time around, you'll be able to do it on the platform. Okay, we still have a few more minutes left. How about the one from Deborah? I hope that a cycling crossing across Sawmill Creek could be part of the thinking. There is extensive cycling infrastructure in Alta Vista to the east of this area and to connect that network to the RA Center without having to go through the high stress Bank Riverside intersection would encourage active transportation for families and seniors. So thank you for that question, for that comment. It's definitely going to be considered. And it would be absolutely wonderful. This is from Catherine. It would be absolutely wonderful if ecosystem enhancement along the Rideau River shoreline could be undertaken for many reasons, including improving water quality to reopen areas for swimming downriver in Ottawa South, Ottawa East, on River Road, Vanier, and further north. With summer temperatures rising, and particularly in the city, this could potentially provide more equitable access to cooling and fun for everyone. Thanks. Okay, do we have any more questions in our chat line? Current practices, road plowing onto the path makes the Rideau River path unusable. In the winter, minor reconfiguration of Riverside Drive and improving plowing practices would make this park usable all year. Julie Carrera, would you like to comment on these comments?
I think they're great points, and we'll definitely take a note of them and consider them as we move forward.
Wonderful. All right. Well, Dennis, do you see any more questions? I do not. I don't see any hands raised, and I think we addressed all the ones in the chat line. Would you agree? I think you're muted.
Given, yes, there may be some other comments that were received earlier, but I think given the time that we should perhaps move to closing so that we can let everyone get away, and appreciate the very active responses we've had so far in the session.
All right. Well, in that case, je vais maintenant remettre le micro à Catherine de la Société Immobilière du Canada pour le mot de la fin. I will now ask Catherine from Canada Lands Company to close the session for us with a few remarks. It's all to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Suzanne. Well, as everyone can see from today's conversation, the Confederation Heights project team is supported by FOTEN, our lead consultant, as well as a wide range of technical experts required for the master planning process. This has been a really extremely productive afternoon, and on behalf of Julie Waddell-Smith and our entire team, I want to thank you for your input and feedback, and we look forward to more conversations with you in the near future. Before we let you go, I do want to mention a few items. On our engagement website, you will have many ways to provide feedback, as Suzanne mentioned. You'll have the ability to access and fill out an online survey, as well as tell and share your story, participate in our special assignment that we have on our website as well as part of the discussion. Or you can also just simply reach out via email and ask a question, and we'll be happy to respond. Also, with regards to the website, just look at the tabs on the main page. The red tabs are all the opportunity for you to provide your feedback. And just one further thing, in addition, we are looking to call on members to join our public advisory committee. As part of the engagement process, we are establishing a public advisory committee, or otherwise it's known as a PAC, and we're conducting an open call seeking the assistance of organizations and individuals that could participate in the master plan. The goal here is for us to engage in a group that can provide the forum for sharing perspectives and advice to both Canada Lands and PSPC throughout the process. And you will be able to find the application on our website under the application tab. I want to thank everyone again for taking the time this afternoon. This has been a wonderful conversation, and thank you for your ongoing interest in this project. Have a nice afternoon.
Merci à chacun et chacune pour votre participation. I would ask that the slide with the email address and the website be posted up again if that's possible. Just one last time for people to take note of our website and our email address and phone number, and also Catherine's address. You can write to Catherine if you like. J'espère que vous avez trouvé la session intéressante et que vous êtes prêts à travailler avec nous au cours des prochaines sessions à venir. Bonne journée et au revoir tout le monde. Thank you. Bye-bye.